Hello, this is the fourth in a series of videos we've been producing as part of my new website, christinenixon.com.au. And this one, I guess, continues the lessons about change and about organisations and management. This one's really about research and about evidence and about data. And you might say, so, what's that got to do with my organisation? Well, I think you need to think about, particularly in public policy or creating change in business or whatever it might be, what's underpinning that change? What's the sort of evidence that says this is the right way to go? My experience, I suppose, back in New South Wales to start with, when we started to think about where policing was in the 80s, what would the future be looking like? So I started really to pay a lot more attention to what did the evidence tell us about what were the best strategies in place? What were the things that we should be stopped doing in terms of just they didn't work? What are the things we should continue to do? And so I think it's really important that you kind of do that work, or you get someone to do it for you, to go back and say, okay, what works, what doesn't, and what's promising. And I think that will help you think through the really solid underpinnings for the work you want to do. During the time in Victoria Police, we commissioned around 22 pieces of research, building on what was already a very solid base about road safety, but then really doing a lot more work about family violence, work about continuous improvement, a series of things that we worked on, which were really about getting a solid base, a solid set of evidence around what we should be working on. We also work with universities with those research projects, and they were through various grants, and we learned a lot about terrorism, about family violence, about organised crime. For instance, when we had the problem with organised crime, we looked all around the world to see who did it best, who were the ones who were successful. We certainly know there's lots of organised crime goes on, but how successful were the police and other government agencies in dealing with it? So just think about the issue of what's the substance of the policies and processes you've got in place, and are they right? I guess my second issue in this one is about data. Now, anybody knows, I guess they describe me as a data Nazi, and that is that I'm really, really keen on knowing what the data is that's key in your organisation. I met a young woman the other day, and she said, well, I'm not really sure what you mean. She said, I just, don't know how I count. What would it be that I'm looking at? And in her case, in her teams, I was looking at turnover. I was looking at who was trained. We were looking at workers' compensation. I was looking at a budget. I was looking at how many projects. And so at different levels of an organisation, you need to be collecting the data. I often say to people, do you know why they keep scoring footy? Well, because you learn who wins. And we did that in Victoria Police, did it in New South Wales Police much earlier. And I'd watched it in places like New York and other parts of the world, Los Angeles, where they kept score, where they looked at all of the indicators. So in Victoria Police, for instance, we'd have huge screens, lots of data on them, where we'd be looking at what the evidence was around how we were going towards our goals. And so that was about workers' compensation. It was about crime. It was about deaths and serious injury on the road. It's about community engagement with the police. Think about the data that's really important to you. And it can be done at a simple level with your team. What's important to your team? What about my division? What are the key indicators? Profit and loss is a part of that within private sector, but in government sector, a bit different. You've got different indicators you're looking for. How long does it take you to do things? What's a comparison perhaps between some locations? I remember when we looked at stolen motor vehicles, we looked across the 10 top locations and actually kind of got them to figure out, why was it different in some locations in the way they were going about reducing stolen motor vehicles to other? What were the strategies? And of course, as you saw some really drive that crime down, you're able to say to the others, well, you're just like them. Maybe we can start to think about what's the data look like. It's a kind of a scorecard as well. And even in the bushfires, and you think, well, how could you do that in the bushfires? We kept score from the very beginning, and that was about how many properties were cleaned up, how many people got casework, how many bodies were found. Just really sad things in many cases, but very much about growing and changing the communities over time. We kept score about the projects that we'd actually started and finished, and until very recently, that kind of scorecard, a 2-page document, was still continued so that people knew where they were up to. So just let me say it again. Think about the research that underpins the processes and systems and activities of your organisation. Think about the kind of evidence that you need to have to change. Think about the data. Have you got a scorecard for your organisation? Have you got a scorecard perhaps for you as an individual and your team, so that people can look at it and go, yep, I know we won. Or alternately, we didn't, and we've got to do a lot more on that particular subject. It's a very important issue. Research, evidence and data. Think about it.